What's up guys, Intelitech Studios here, and today is going to be the full review of the Honiture H8 Cordless Vacuum Cleaner. Now this unit can be purchased right now on Amazon for about $150, and it basically is competing with a lot of other machines in the similar style and price bracket. It's obviously kind of modeled after a lot of the Dyson cordless machines that are often way more expensive, and is clearly competing with other brands like Tinico and Musu for this same product space. Now, this is the first out of all those brands I've mentioned that I have tried other than the Dyson, and I gotta admit, I am very impressed with this machine. Now, the reason this review has been a little bit sort of delayed from me getting this is because I've been using this as my daily driver, and I quite literally mean daily. The only other cordless machine that I have at this house is my Hoover Lynx, and due to the sort of better versatility of this machine, I've been using it a lot more. And I gotta say, I am surprisingly impressed with it. Now, there's a few reasons why that I'll get into in this review, but let's go ahead and go over it. So first off, we have the main machine right here, which has a removable battery, and one thing that I like about this machine is that the battery is actually removable. So if we move this out of the way, we can see that this battery just pops right off. You just press this little button right here. Again, it's easier to do this with two hands than with one hand, and it just slides right off. Now, Honiture does sell replacement batteries, so you can actually get a second battery if you want. And one nice thing about this is it does come with a charger, obviously, and the charger actually plugs into the battery itself, which I really like, because then if the charger port on this battery goes bad, you can just replace the battery and you don't have to replace the entire unit or the part of the housing that the charging port actually connects to. The charging port connects directly to the battery, and another nice thing about that is that you can actually charge the battery externally. You don't need any sort of charging dock, you just plug it in as you would normally just without the vacuum attached, and it charges the battery directly. So you can buy an extra battery and have one on the charger all the time and keep one on the unit, so that way you have it ready to go if you don't want to set up the dock. That is a very nice feature, and immediately something that I really like about this machine. So that definitely is a really nice touch. The battery is easily removable. You don't need any screws or anything to pop it off. You just press this button and it slides right off. But you can see there's these little bits right here that it just slides into. This sort of just mold, and it just slides in and clicks into place right there. The one thing that does worry me a little bit about this machine is that these pins right here are exposed. Now the good news is they do feel sturdy, they don't feel cheap, and they don't feel like they're sort of wobbling all over the place. So these should last just fine, but just keep in mind these pins are bare, so be careful when you're sliding the battery on. You don't want to try to jam it in, and you want to make sure that you are in fact lining this thing up when you slide it into place, because if you're trying to clip it in this way, it's not going to go in and you may end up bending and damaging some of these pins. And if you do that, obviously the battery is not going to click in properly. So make sure when you're putting this battery on that you are actually sliding it into place. And again, this is hard to do with one hand, but you get the idea. It just slides into place just like this, just like that. Once you get it lined up, it goes on super easily. And another thing that I just demonstrated by accident is that you need this battery in place to hold the bin on. So it's very difficult to remove the bin with the battery in place, but you should remove the battery when you do anything with the bin anyways, if you're actually going to remove it and not just empty it. So that is kind of nice how you can pull off the battery and get to the bin. However, that does mean that whenever the battery is not in place, the bin pretty much just falls off. Now, that does mean that it's not going to get stuck or anything, but it does mean that you can see, like right now it's on, and you just twist this barely even a little bit and it pops off, which does mean that it's easy to get off. But it also means that if you have the battery off, be careful, because if you nudge this, the bin could pop off and fall off onto the floor. So just keep that in mind. But once you get the battery off, you can just twist the bin right here. You can see there's a lock and an unlock. You just twist it, and even with one hand it pops off very easily. And you can see right there, there is the bin, and there is the motor intake. So again, this battery actually has a little sort of groove on it, so once this is sitting in the groove, then you can't remove this while the battery is attached. So if you're having trouble getting this off, just make sure that the battery needs to be pulled off first, but on the bright side, that is very easy and quick to do. Going off to this bin, we can see that it has a little section right here that you just flip down and the bin opens. So there's no sort of buttons or anything like that. It's just friction fit. It just fits over this little catch right here, and you just pull this off just like this, and that's how you get to it. There's a max mark right here, so you empty it when it gets to the max line. And also, to get inside this little thing, there is a little filter in here, which you just pull straight out. And I recommend cleaning this every time that you empty the bin on this. Or if you have another vacuum cleaner, which you should have another vacuum cleaner, you can use that to clean off this filter. Otherwise, you basically want to wash it every time that you use the machine. Or, again, you can just check it pretty regularly, and once this is discolored and you can't see these little faucets anymore, you want to make sure to wash this and make sure it dries for at least 24, if not 48 hours before you put it back into the machine. Also, this little red part of the Cyclone, you can turn this. Again, it turns extremely easily, so it's almost too easy to take out, but you can just pop this out, and then if there's any hair wrapped around this screen, you can just kind of brush that off. The device does include a little cleaning brush that you can use to clean this off, but again, I recommend just washing this, or just if you have another vacuum that you can use to clean this off, that's a good idea as well. Just make sure this little sort of grate screen is completely empty of any debris and doesn't have anything on it, and of course there's some dust on this, so you can kind of brush that off as well. And then once this all sort of is dry and or clean, you just put it back in, line it up with the little cams up here. You can see there's these little notches up here that you can line it up with. If you're trying to do this with one hand like I am, you can turn it upside down like this, and then just kind of line it up. Again, hard to do with one hand, but with two hands it's really easy. Just when you're doing it with one hand and looking through a camera lens, it's a bit harder to do. There we go. You can see it's popped in, and we can't pull it out, so that means it's firm in there. Then we can just take the filter and push it in. This is friction fit, so you just want to kind of line this up so it goes in. You can see right now it's loose, but if we line this up and we push it down into place, there we go, and now we can close this up. So now it's all back together. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that if you do want to clean the bin itself, be careful when washing it if you do decide to wash it, because these are the connectors that connect to the machine for the power head and the motorized brush. So I would recommend not washing this, because if you get that wet and you don't dry it properly, you could cause some rust here, and that could damage the connector. So I recommend just taking out this inner Cyclone piece and just wiping the inside of the bin with a damp cloth. Or if you do wash it, just be very careful and try not to get this part wet. But again, I would recommend just wiping it with a damp cloth, and that should take care of it, no problem. So that's pretty much all as far as maintenance. The only other filter that there is to maintain on this is there's a little HEPA filter right here. You just twist it and it pops right out. Very easy, very secure in there. You can see I've used it pretty heavily, and this thing hasn't really discolored too much yet. So it is a HEPA filter. Honiture does claim that this is a sealed system, and in fact it appears to be. I don't have any sort of particle counter to test that officially, but I don't really see any signs that that would not be the case. So again, just pop this back in and pop it into place. Again, easier to do with two hands than with one hand. One thing I will say about this filter is I kind of wish that this filter was able to be separated from this outer housing piece, but this is all one unit, so if you want to replace this, you just have to replace it as one unit. So that can be annoying or convenient depending on your situation, but for me, I would prefer if the filter actually detached from this and this outer housing was a separate piece, but it works just fine. We also have some ventilation holes on either side, so basically the exhaust for the machine is on either side, which if you are vacuuming something and you're vacuuming something like that's actually a sort of a heavy material, it is possible that this could blow those materials to the side depending on what it is that you're using, and like what mode you're using the vacuum in and how close you are to the debris. That can have an effect on that, but generally it shouldn't be an issue. But that's just something to keep in mind. If you are vacuuming up a lot of coarse debris, that exhaust could get in the way, although in my experience it wasn't really an issue. So we can see again, this goes on very easily, just slides right on just like that. And then the battery slides into this groove right here. If I have lined it up correctly, which I haven't. There, now it's lined up correctly, and it just snaps right into place. Just like that. And now the machine is ready to go. So again, just kind of use your best judgment. You can tell whenever this gets pretty dirty and this will need clean. Again, I recommend cleaning all of this out every time you use the machine and checking the filter and cleaning that as needed. Now, in my experience, even when the filter was full of dirt, this thing did still have good suction, but obviously you don't want to do that long term because that could potentially be pulling dust into the motor because it may compromise the filter and have dust go through it. So again, just keep up with the maintenance on that. But thankfully it's a very small filter, it's very easy. And like I said, if you do have another machine with tools that you can use to clean this, which ideally you should, because this is not a replacement for a full-size corded upright or canister, but it is close. I'll get to that in a sec. But if you do that, then you won't even have to necessarily worry about washing this thing out. So again, just keep that in mind. Like anything else, maintenance is important, but this is very easy to maintain. So that is nice. And it appears, did I put this on correctly? I did put it on correctly, okay. Alright, so now, ready to go. Now, as we can see, the machine does have LED indicator lights to show you how much battery life is left. It has 3 little bars, so there's no sort of like screen or digital thing to tell you how much is left, but this is perfectly sufficient. So basically you have about 25, about 50, about 75%. Actually, that's not right. We have 30, 60, 90%, give or take. So 33, 66, 99%. Either way, so a third, half, and full battery. So pretty easy to figure that out and see how much battery life you have left. Very on par with a lot of other cordless machines in this price range. But again, like I said, since you can buy a second battery, you can actually just have one on standby and keep it on the charger, or if you have the dock for this thing set up and just have it charging every time you're not using it, that's the way I prefer to go about it, because leaving it just sitting not on the charger kind of tends to be, you know, a way to drain the battery. I haven't noticed any real issues with battery draining while it was off the charger, but if you do that, you know, over time and you're not using it as often, then you may notice battery drain over time, which that's not a complaint about the machine, that's just how batteries work. So if you are worried about that, maybe you want to get a second battery or set up the actual dock that this thing comes with, which looks like that. I haven't installed this yet, but I will likely install this soon. I just haven't found a good place to put it. So, but this machine does come with a nice little dock that you can set the machine in and charge it automatically. So another thing that I like about this is that it actually has a really quiet motor. So whenever you're using this, it defaults on the low mode. So when you turn it on, you can tell it sounds pretty normal. And it has pretty good suction, but you know, it's not amazing, but for something like this, it has perfectly sufficient suction. But if you feel that it's not enough, there is a little plus and minus right here. And now it's on a high mode. So yeah, as you can tell, it actually defaults on the low setting, which is definitely a good thing because most of the time you're only going to need this on the lower setting. You won't need it on the high setting. So it's good that it defaults on the low, and so that way you can save battery and not use up power that you don't need. And plus, if you are using this on high power for a very long time, just like any battery, this battery will eventually degrade because you're pushing it a little bit harder, but it does default on low, and I found that that's perfectly fine for most things. I have really yet to have any issues with it on the low mode, but again, if you do, it does have the high mode where it has more suction, so that is something to keep in mind. If you feel like you're not getting enough power out of this, just press that button, it'll put it on the high mode, then you get a little bit more power. Now, according to the sticker on the bottom of the machine, this battery is a lithium-ion battery. It's a 6-cell battery, and it has about 2,600 milliamp hours of capacity. Now, that may not sound like a lot, because that may sound like, you know, maybe half of a modern smartphone, or equivalent to maybe an older smartphone, but the battery life on this is actually surprisingly good. Now, Honiture claims that you can get anywhere from 18 to about 35 minutes of battery life, somewhere in that range, so upwards of, you know, a half hour-ish of battery life. And I will admit, I have yet to run this thing out of battery, so I've used this thing to clean my entire house. I've used it to clean my living room, and then my kitchen, and then followed by my upstairs, both the upstairs itself and actually on the stairs, on the upstairs stairs. if that made any sense. And this thing did not run out of battery, so I will say that the battery life, I didn't exactly time it per se. I didn't actually like just let this thing sit on and see when it finally died. That is actually one thing I forgot to do before I did this review that I was planning on. But if I do end up doing that, then I'll put that in the description just to let you guys know in case this perhaps is a little bit less and I just didn't notice it. But again, I used to clean this entire house and I had no issues with it dying. So if you have a decent sized apartment or a small house similar to the size of mine, you shouldn't have any issues with this thing. Now, that was using it on the low mode. Perhaps on the high mode it would drain it faster, because usually that's how that works. But in the entire time that I was using it, I never ran the thing out of juice, so I can't exactly say that battery life estimate from Honiture is incorrect. It appears to be holding true. So again, I didn't exactly time it per se, just like I didn't really with the Lynx either, but the battery life is decent and it has held up, and I've noticed that it has been very consistent, and I have yet to kill the thing, so that definitely is good. The battery life on this appears to be excellent. So despite the fact that the 2600 milliamp hour capacity may not seem like a lot, especially when you would think that, oh, wouldn't a vacuum use more energy than a current cell phone? That likely is true, but again, in my experience, it lasts just fine, and I had no issues with the battery life on this machine. And another thing to mention about the battery life is that obviously the motorized attachments, like the motorized turbo brush, will use more battery since it is powering a second motor from the main battery. So if you are concerned about battery life, then obviously you will get more battery life out of a attachment that doesn't have any sort of motor and is just relying on the straight suction of the machine. So all of these other factors can affect the battery life, but again, even with using it with the main floor head, I didn't have any issues with battery life. So in theory, you shouldn't have any issues either. And if you do have that option of a replaceable and a secondary battery that you can purchase for the machine. Now, as far as the attachments and accessories that you get with a Honiture, you do get the charging dock. You get this little cleaning brush that you can use to clean the sort of inside filters of it or the bin, or you can presumably use it for whatever else you'd want to brush. It includes a secondary soft roller for the included power head, which you can in fact replace, as well as the main power head itself with the standard brush as default. It comes with a motorized turbo brush, and it comes with the extension wand. It comes with a combination dusting brush and upholstery tool, and it comes with a crevice tool, as well as some papers. So you do get a decent amount of accessories with this machine, and that definitely is something that I like, especially for this value. Now, I have seen other machines in this similar price range. My local Walmart has a Tinico A10 Dash, which is very similar to this machine, also for $150. But the thing I like about that Tinico is that, or I should say that I like about this as opposed to that Tinico, is that this includes a motorized turbo brush and an extra swappable soft roller for hard floors, which definitely means it's a lot better value than a lot of other machines that I've seen. Now again, this is the first one that I've tried, so it is possible that there's some other machine out there that has more accessories with it in this price range, but I have yet to see any. This is definitely the first one that I've noticed, and so far, based on my opinion, not based on my opinion, well I guess technically, but not what I meant to say, based on my experience, then this one appears to be one of the better options. So this extension wand, by the way, since we're talking about that, it is a nice extension wand. It is nice and metal, so it feels very sturdy. It's a nice brushed aluminum sort of coating. It has a nice little cherry red texture to it, which I definitely like. And it does have this nice little connector to it, which feels solid. The one thing that I don't like about this is because I am 5'10", not 5'10", I'm 5'11", how do I not know my own height? I'm 5'11", you know, about 6 feet tall, so this does feel a little bit short to me. It does kind of feel like I'm kind of straining a little bit to kind of keep this closer to the ground, and then I'm kind of leaning over and extending my arm a little bit too much, so it feels a little bit less comfortable. At least it did at first. I did get used to it, and obviously if you're shorter then it would be even better. But if you are a taller person, if you're around 6 feet like I am, you will have to kind of extend your arm out a little bit to get this to sort of reach to the floor. So one thing that I could recommend as a sort of revision for Honiture, and I've seen other machines do this too, is make this a telescoping wand. So that way, this is like the standard length, or maybe a little bit shorter as a standard length, but it has a little section that we can adjust and make this wand even longer. So that way, it'd be better for taller people, or if you're trying to reach farther up than this wand allows, that would be a great addition to this machine. But as is, if you're a shorter person, or if you're, around 5'10" or shorter, this wand is very comfortable to use on floors, especially if you're shorter, since obviously it's less, it's not as long. But if you are a very tall person, if you're like my Uncle Mark and you're like, 6'5" or something, this would likely be uncomfortable to use for an extended period of time on floors. So just keep that in mind. As someone who is 5'11", 6 feet-ish tall, this is just a little bit shorter than I would like, but it is still certainly usable. But if you're even taller than that, you may have some issues with this wand. So just keep that in mind, that it is a little bit short for a very tall person, but for most people, it should be perfectly fine, especially for someone that's, 5-ish feet tall. It should be more than adequate. So that's just a little complaint that I had personally. But most other people in my household that use this didn't have any complaints with it, or at least they didn't tell me. And even though I did have that complaint the first time that I used it, after using it for about a week, I pretty much forgot about it. So it definitely is something that I got used to, but it would be a cool little addition if Honiture could add that in a further revision, or if they could sell maybe an extra wand that's about half the length of this that I could order as an accessory and then clip it onto this one and have, another third of wand to add to this to give myself a little bit better reach. That would be a nice thing as well. So this wand is definitely very good quality, but, depending on the person, it could be a little bit short. But again, that's just for someone who's really tall like me. For most people, it should be alright. There's also this main powered floor head, which definitely works very well. This brush that's included by default works very well, and considering this is a cordless machine, it does a surprisingly good job at actually getting dirt that's deep in the carpet. Now obviously it's not as good as, a full-size upright that's, brand new, but it is surprisingly close. Now, it's not close enough for this to replace your main vacuum. Now, if you have a lot of carpeting like I do in this house, or you have a very, very large area where, you have just a lot of really thick carpeting, then I would recommend, if you're going to get this, get another full-size upright to supplement it. But if you have a small house with very short pile, or even, somewhat medium pile carpet, or if you have a large house that's hardwood floors or very thin area rugs, then this is still a great option. But, and again, even for a bigger house like that has a lot of carpet, this still is a good option. It just shouldn't be your only thing that you get for your cleaning needs, because this brush does work very well for what this machine is, but it's not going to perform as well as a full-size corded upright with a rotating brush. That just makes sense. It's just generally how these go. Even the more expensive machines that actually aim to be sort of upright replacements tend to not be so. But especially for this price, the amount of performance that I got out of it was pretty impressive. So it is very impressive. It will definitely do your vacuuming in a pinch. But I would say if you're using this thing every day to vacuum your carpets, then I would say, get a full-size upright and maybe at least vacuum like every week or two, just to sort of get whatever this would be leaving behind. But again, that's not an insult about this thing. It's just comparing a full-size, corded mains powered upright to something like this that uses a small battery. So just keep that in mind. This is not a full upright replacement if you have a lot of carpets, but it is still a good supplement for a machine like that. Now, for those wondering how well this machine does do on carpet, whenever I first got it, I hadn't vacuumed this, or I should say I hadn't vacuumed this main living area in about a day since I had gotten it, so it was about a day or two of dirt built up into this carpet, and I used it to clean this carpet, and basically this is what I got up out of it. So it actually got a pretty decent amount of dirt for, again, for what this thing is. And this isn't a week's worth of dirt, this is about a day or two's worth of dirt, and yeah, that's about what I would expect if I was using the same machine over and over again and vacuuming every day. That's about a day's worth of dirt that I would expect. And yeah, so it actually got a pretty decent amount of dirt. And then after I vacuumed with this, I followed it up with that Phantom over there, since it was just the vacuum that I was sort of testing at the time. And we can see that the Phantom got relatively little. Now, granted, the Phantom obviously is a much older machine. That machine is in need of a new brush roll and potentially some motor service, but it does kind of show the point that if you have an older upright that perhaps is needing of some maintenance and isn't performing as well as it used to previously, then this could actually end up cleaning significantly better, or very, very similar and on a similar level to a full-size upright. But again, not as much as maybe a brand new one or one that was recently refurbished or actually had any parts that have worn out replaced. But if you are comparing this to an old upright that was sort of beat up and hasn't been really taken care of over the years, then this machine will hold its own very, very well. And that definitely is impressive. So looking more closely at this power head, we can see that the way it's designed, it has a little hose right here which does swivel, and this hose kind of reminds me a lot of the hose that's on something like a Swiffer sweeper vac. It does feel sturdy, it doesn't feel like it's really moving all that much, so I don't think this should have any issues with splitting or wearing over time. It doesn't feel like a cheap hose that would do such a thing. Now, if something changes, I'll let you guys know, but so far, I've been obviously using this thing pretty heavily, and this hose has held up just fine. Again, it's been only a week, so I would hope that this hose wouldn't have any issues, but so far, a pretty common wear spot on these is holding up rather well. And it does have this articulating joint, so if you want to use this for any sort of swiveling or getting around corners, it does do that very well. And if we flip this over, we can see it does have these little wheels right here. Now, one thing I will say is that a couple of these wheels are kind of sharp on a couple of the edges. Perhaps that's just the way they were manufactured. But I haven't had any issues with it like scratching floors, but also I don't have any delicate wood floors. But the good news is that these wheels are rubber coated, so if you are using these on a delicate floor, they shouldn't have any issues with gliding on them, and assuming there's no debris that's actually on the wheel that could scratch the floors itself, then these shouldn't have any issues with scratching any sort of delicate flooring. And also, if you are using this on delicate flooring, I would recommend swapping it out with the soft roller. And honestly, I recommend swapping it out with a soft roller on any sort of floor, because generally this roll does better on carpet, this roller does better on hard floors, especially for something like dust and getting dust off of hard floors. This works very well at that, so that definitely is a nice touch. And if you want to actually replace the brush in this, as you should, you can see there is a little slot right here with a lock and an unlock, and you're supposed to use like a flat tip screwdriver or a coin, but I just kind of put my fingernails in here and just kind of twist it, and that allows it to pop out. And then once you unsnap it like that, you can just grab the brush and pull it straight out of the unit. Now, once you do that, I recommend that every time you go to change this brush, which again should be, ideally every time you want to do sort of a significant cleaning on floors. Now, this brush does work perfectly fine on both carpets and floors, but if you are trying to get a lot of fine materials up on floors, then this brush will likely do better. So if you do swap out these brushes, or if you don't, then probably, every few times that you use this, probably every time that you empty the bin, I would say, you want to check this brush roll, pull it out, and pull any hair or strings off of it. Make sure there's no strings around either of these bearings, and you can see this little bit pops off. Make sure there's no hair wrapped around in this bearing right here. You can see there's a lot of hair right here. If this hair gets wrapped around the bearing, you could potentially cause some issues with that bearing. So just make sure that's free of any sort of debris, and you shouldn't have any issues. Again, same with this little cap. Make sure there's no debris in here, and you should be good to go. Also, on this little bit right here, make sure there's no debris right here. Now, debris does often get stuck to this portion right here. You can see there's these little teeth, which are presumably here to clean off the brush roll, but material can get stuck on this little entranceway, as you can see right here. Since this is white, it is very easy to see all this, but that's easy enough to clean up. You can just kind of get a damp rag and just kind of wipe all this down and get that out. Now, one thing that I don't like about this is for some reason there's this weird little crevice right here, this little cavity, and obviously that's so that way this can be sort of angled towards the inside, but the thing that's annoying about this is a lot of dust will get kicked up in this little corner, and you'll have to clean this out. Now, I don't understand why this is there. I feel like it would be a lot better to have this just filled in with plastic, so this is just solid and flush, because a lot of dust does get kicked up into this little section right here, and that does make it a little bit harder to clean. But one thing that I do like about this is there is a little felt gasket on the back of this cleaner head, so that way if you are trying to suck up any sort of materials and maybe one of these brushes isn't catching it, then this will keep it from scattering that debris. And it has worked pretty well. Even when using this brush roller, it does keep it from scattering debris. So it does sometimes scatter debris if you use a lot of sort of like very heavy debris. Like I did a test with this where I sucked up a lot of oats on the floor. It did kick some of it around, but it was a very sort of extreme test. For any sort of, average test that you would see, it will get everything up on the first try. And if you do have a very big test like that, you will have to go over some areas because it will kick some debris around, but most times you won't have that issue. So, as we can see, there's also a little felt strip on the front, which this is actually a really nice feature. I wish more vacuums had this because I'm always a person, as a vacuum collector, who doesn't like the front or sides of the vacuums getting scratched up. So that's one thing that is nice about this, is that you have this little felt sort of a bumper on it. So if you do run this into something, which you shouldn't, but if you do tap something like a wall, you're not going to scratch the machine, you're not going to scratch whatever surface that you've hit it against. So that definitely is nice. So that way that can keep this from sort of scuffing up anything, and it does have a nice soft texture, so if you do run it into something, it won't cause any damage to the machine or to whatever it is that you hit with it. Now again, you shouldn't be vacuuming so fast that you ram it into something, but if for some reason you do have that to sort of keep it in good shape. And since this is a white plastic, you're not going to see any paint marks or anything like that. So if you do run this along your baseboards and you do get some paint marks on it, they'll be mostly invisible. So I'm assuming that's why Honiture went with this sort of white color scheme. That, and because, in case you didn't know, white plastic is actually cheaper to manufacture than colored plastic. So that probably is also another reason why they did that, as a way of saving money and hopefully focusing sort of funds to other aspects of the machine. So again, if you do have one of these brushes, just sort of pull off any of the strings before you put this back in, and make sure none of it is wrapped around these end caps, since again that can affect how it goes in. See right there, there's a couple pieces of hair, but obviously if I was doing this by myself, I'd be able to pull all this hair off. And you don't need any scissors or anything, you just pull it straight off, so I've had no issues with cleaning this up. But for the rest of this review, I will put in the soft roller, and we can see nice good quality bearing in there. So you can just kind of push this in, just like that, and then just take this little end piece, just like that, and just kind of line that up and pop it right back in, and there we go. So another thing I do like about this soft roller is the soft roller is a lot better at sort of resisting hair tangles. Now this isn't too bad with tangling hair, but if you do suck up a lot of hair, as you can see, it will get sort of wound around it over time. So that is easy to clean, but if you vacuum up a lot of hair and you don't want to have to deal with it, then you may want to keep the soft roller on. In fact, generally I keep the soft roller on anyways, because while the soft roller doesn't do as good at deep cleaning on carpet, it does still glide along the carpet good, and it does do better on hard floors and does better at picking up debris, like actual surface debris. So for my use case, having the soft roller on more often than not is the better choice, but depending on your flooring situation, you may want to keep this on more often as well, so it just depends on your situation. And of course you can use both of these and determine which one is the best for you. But again, I really like this soft roller, and the fact this machine comes with both of them is actually really nice. Now, another thing that's nice about this is it actually has LED headlights. So we can see if we attach this right here, you can see when we turn it on, LED headlights. So that is one thing that is very nice. You actually have LED headlights on this so you can see where you're going. So that is a very nice feature. Again, compared to a lot of more expensive machines like the Dyson, this has more features, and that definitely is really good for the price point. So you have nice LED headlights. One thing I will say is, while I always like having the LED headlights on, some people out there don't like LED headlights or would prefer to have them off. So if there was somehow a way to make it to where you could shut these headlights off and turn them on as you would like, I think that would be a nice little revision to add to this machine. So perhaps if they added a switch that was like right here that you could press and turn the headlights on and off, I think that would be perfect, because then everyone, whether or not you like or dislike the LED headlights, would like having them there, because you would have the option either way. Another thing, to get into other things that other machines often don't have that this has, that I meant to touch on earlier but I forgot to, is that you don't have to hold this trigger. This trigger, you can just press it and it stays on. So you don't have to actually hold this. You don't have to actually hold this. You can, but there's no reason to. So you can just leave it, and then while you're vacuuming, you don't have to actually worry about holding this trigger down and then having it shut off the moment you let it go. You can just turn it on, hands-free, and just use it. Now obviously you wouldn't hold it like that, you'd hold it like this, but still, you don't have to have this wrapped around this trigger. Another little thing about this, and I'm not really sure if this is, it definitely doesn't seem like a bad thing, but it's just something I noticed, is that if you pay attention to that, the LED headlights and the brush actually turn on before the suction motor does. So this has a nice little soft start motor. I don't know if it's actually like technically soft start, but it basically feels like a soft start motor, where it turns on after the brush does. In case you notice that, if you pay attention to this real quick. So yeah, the brush actually turns on before the suction does. And it doesn't seem like that's a bad thing. Maybe the logic for that is that, the brush turns on, so if you have some debris and you run over it, it kicks it up, and then the suction grabs it as soon as the vacuum turns on. I don't know. I don't really know if there's any real reason to have one turn on before the other, or just have them both turn on at the same time. But I'm definitely not complaining. It definitely does work very well, and I have no complaints. And it's kind of a little quirky thing. But yeah, so with that, and the fact that you don't have to hold this trigger, I think that alone makes this a huge sell for me personally. Again, compared to the Dyson V8 or the Dyson V7 Animal Plus that I previously have. That one is currently in use by my dad, so I don't have it actually here to compare it to this machine. But I actually do like this a lot better than that machine. If for no other reason than for the fact that I don't have to buy entirely different bases to have the rollers, I can just swap the rollers themselves, for the fact that I don't have to hold the trigger, and the fact that it has LED headlights. So that definitely is another really nice feature. And speaking of Dyson, this sort of a fitting for the attachments, you can tell it just fits in with a little clip right there, and it does clip into place. Now, the attachments, this one does look an awful lot like a Dyson attachment. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It does work very well. Unlike the Dyson attachment, it is missing the sort of little piece of felt that would usually be right there. But, that's not too big of a deal, considering you have several other attachments with the sort of a felt picker on it. So, generally, most people are probably going to press this little button right here. And once you press this little button, and it goes to the brush mode just like that. So if you want to use it for dusting, you can. Or if you push this button back and push it back down, it pops down into the sort of just general purpose use tool. And you can tell I haven't used this attachment too much, but it is nice. It generally is the one that I leave on the machine stock in case I need to grab something real quick. And you can see this attachment pops in very easily. It's sort of keyed. It has this little notch right here, and there's a little notch on the machine right there that you can see. So it fits in only one way, which is kind of nice because it means that you don't put the attachment on crooked. It means you do put it on the right way every time. And it goes in very, very easily, and they're also very easy to pop off too. So This little button mechanism, it does feel relatively sturdy. I haven't had any issues with it so far. Now, as opposed to a friction fit, this could eventually break one day if you are very heavy with this thing, but a lot of other machines that I've had that have these sort of releases, those ones haven't broke either, so I think this one should definitely fare just as well, but again, time will tell. But that's just something that, that's the reason why some people prefer to have friction fit. But the nice part about not having a friction fit, is that you don't have to push it on. It just goes on very easily, and it clicks into place. It's firm on there, it's not going to go anywhere, and with a little button push, you can just pop the attachments right off. And that's the same way with this multi-tool. It's the same way with this crevice tool. Again, pops in very easily. The crevice tool does have a little suction relief valve on the one side, so if you're vacuuming something and this blocks, some of the air can come in through the side. If you are vacuuming up some heavy material, the material might clog this side if it sucks it in through the side, so keep that in mind. But otherwise, for just your basic crevice tool usage, it definitely is a nice little feature, so that way you can make sure that this doesn't get blocked and you don't actually cause the airflow to be completely cut off. So the only thing is I don't know why they wouldn't put it on both sides, but I'm assuming they put it on one side so that way it's just easier to deal with. So if you do want to have all of your power, you can just block the one side, although I wouldn't recommend that, but it's there if you want it. And you can tell I've been using this one pretty extensively because there is some dust in this tool, but obviously this is plastic, so you can always wash it if you want. And a lot of these tools have this sort of a matte coating, and they do feel kind of like a hollow plastic, but they do feel sturdy. I can't really squeeze it. It definitely does feel like it's sturdy and it's going to last a while. Same thing with this attachment. The one thing I will say is that I'm not a fan of this motorized brush. Now this does have the same sort of feature where you can turn this and pull the brush out to maintain it, but this turbo tool I'm honestly not a fan of, and mainly for the reason that this little articulating joint is a bit difficult to use. Whenever I'm vacuuming with this, I've noticed that it will often pop up and it kind of gets in the way. If we pop this on real quick, we can see that if we vacuum on this carpet with this, you see that? So as you can see, when you're pulling back or when you're moving forward, it's fine because it's pushing against it and causing that sort of friction on whatever it is that you're using it on, and it seems to work fine. But then when you pull back, this little piece right here, this little articulating joint, pops up and then no longer has contact with the surface. Now, I don't know if it's something that I'm doing wrong, but if there was an option to just sort of lock this into place, if there was like some sort of seal that could lock this in place so that way this little articulating joint didn't move and I could lock it either like this or like this, I think that would be a lot better. Because the thing I like about this attachment is that it does very well. Like whenever I first got this machine, I used it on that couch and that chair. Oh, I got that backwards. On this chair and that couch. I tried to use it on that dog, but she ran away from me. I used it on both of those, and the amount of fine dust and hair that it got out of it with this attachment was actually very impressive. But if the attachment is difficult to use, then you're not really incentivized to use it all that much. So it does perform very well. It does clean. It actually, even on this carpet, I can feel it agitating surprisingly well for what it is. Like, I can feel it buzzing the carpet. Like, when my hand is right here, I can feel it buzzing the carpet. Obviously, it's not going to be as much as a full-size vacuum, but for something this tiny, the amount of agitation that it has is pretty nice. So, that, again, it has these brushes, and it does work rather well, but it's just, again, I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, but I looked, and it doesn't appear that there's really any way of fixing this little issue. It just feels like this is just kind of stuck flapping around like this, and with that, it doesn't really want to, it doesn't really want to work all that much because it's just kind of stuck this way. Now, on the bright side with this turbo tool, I actually, after I filmed the section that you just saw with this turbo tool, I actually thought to myself, wait a minute, I have this penny that I use to clean out this turbo tool. What if I just jammed it right here in the mechanism that is causing me troubles? So, just a little thing there. I just popped a penny in this little joint right here, and now look at that. So now that I popped a little penny just in this little section and just jammed it, now it's not popping up. So now that when I'm using it, it stays in the same orientation. So as long as you hold it like this, it stays in place. So look at that. I just kind of jerry-rigged a little solution there, and that was my biggest complaint with this turbo tool, because again, the performance of it was perfectly fine. I was really happy with the performance of it on my furniture. But now that I just jammed this little penny in here, now this little arm is stuck and it stays like this, as it should. So, and I'm assuming if you wanted to do it down here, I'm sure you could as well. And if you want to go on something at more of an angle than this is. But yeah, so if you're having the same problem that I'm having with this little motorized turbo brush, and you don't like this little joint here just moving all over the place and not allowing you to clean, there you go. Pop that little penny in there, and now you're good to go. Look at that. So now, with that little solution, you can see that it works really well. Again, both my dog and my cat were laying up there throughout the day, so we can see it definitely got up a lot of dirt and hair from that section now that this little turbo tool works properly. So that definitely is a nice little thing that I just thought of. So if you're having the same issue like I am with this, where this little joint is having issues with just sort of moving and getting in the way and being a little bit annoying, just jam a coin in there, and then now it'll stay this way and work just fine. And another thing that's nice about this is that you can actually put just the normal floor head directly onto the vacuum itself without the wand. So this is what I've been doing before I discovered this little trick, just having the main brush in this head and just using this on my furniture. And that's been working really well too. So if you're using this for something like stairs or a mattress, this is probably better. But if you're using this for a couch or something, and for some reason you don't want an attachment this big, then this is also a good option as well, at least if you do something like that, or if yours doesn't happen to have the same sort of floppy sort of joint issue that this one has. So if you don't want to worry about this, you do still have the main carpet attachment, which you can perfectly use on a mattress or on stairs or even on your upholstery just fine. And I think I'll still prefer to use this, if only for the fact that it's larger, so it can cover more area and make cleaning a little bit quicker. So that is a nice touch. And of course, whenever you go this route, you still get the LED headlights. And a real quick another final note about the attachments. If you do lose one of these Honiture attachments and you don't want to go about getting a official replacement, which they won't fit as well, but you can actually use Dyson attachments on this machine. So if you have an attachment like this is one from a DC33, it does snap on there and work just fine. Now, it works surprisingly well. So if you wanted to use something like this one probably isn't the best example because it's a little bit short, so you can't really reach it all that well. But maybe if you want to put this on the end of the wand or something, in case you didn't want a rotating brush for whatever it was that you were cleaning, you could get one of these and pop that on there just fine. So while it won't match, you actually do have a nice ecosystem of attachments. So if for whatever reason you're on the fence about this because you're worried about finding replacement attachments, don't be, because you can very easily find replacement Dyson attachments and they'll work on this with no trouble. Again, assuming that you have one that sort of fits and lines up with this correctly. If I put this on the end of the wand, though, I'm sure it would be okay. In fact, I might as well try that real quick while I'm here. Let's see if this works. We'll do it live. See if this fits onto this. Oh, heard the click. Now, strangely enough, it's even though it clicked, it's a little bit loose. You can see it kind of swivels a little bit, but it does appear to work. So if we put this on, see how well this works. Just like that, and we will see. Yeah, there we go. Look at that. So that definitely works as well. So in conclusion, I've been very happy with this machine. Well, it only costs 150 bucks. My apologies for that interruption. Ruby wanted to go outside. But anyways, I've been very happy with this Honiture. Now, of course, this is the only sort of cordless vacuum in this style that I have at this house, but I actually do like it a lot better than a lot of the other cordless machines that I've used. In fact, all the other cordless machines that I've used, this one is definitely my favorite out of all of them. So for 150 bucks, I can definitely recommend this. It cleans pretty well. The attachments are pretty good on it, especially that power head. The battery life is good, and the batteries are nice and interchangeable. The trigger and the sort of design, and as far as how you can use it, is a lot easier to use than other machines that are even far out of its price class. So I definitely can recommend this. I have been very happy with mine, and while I haven't had it long enough yet to comment on the long-term durability of the machine, so far it's held up pretty fine. So, if you own this machine, let me know how you like it in the comments below, and if you have one of these, hopefully you like it, and if you get one, hopefully you like it too, because I'm definitely a fan of mine. Now, Honiture did send this to me for review. I didn't pay anything out of pocket to acquire this machine, but I was not paid for this review, and Honiture was not given any sort of copy approval, so you are seeing this at the same time that they are, and everything that I said in this review was completely honest. You can tell that, I was being honest because there were a couple little nitpicks I had with the machine. But overall, especially for the price, I'm very happy with it, and I'm definitely satisfied with the amount of machine that I got for the 150 bucks that they're charging. So, again, based on my experience, this machine is very, very good, and I can definitely recommend it. So, anyway guys, this is Untitled Studios signing out with my review of the Honiture H8, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one. Peace.